you that I'm recording in just a moment.
Yeah, starting recording. It's there in the corner.
There we go. Okay, so it's actually started now. Right, I'll just do a little intro thing because I'm recording for YouTube, and then we can chat about whatever and everything and just see where we get to. So hello everyone, bringing you another chat today, this time with John Shanahan, who is a fellow collector and ex-Irish Army. So we're just going to chat about some bits and pieces, collections, all sorts of bits and pieces probably, which I think, well, hopefully it'll be interesting. And obviously we've got some Op Banner stuff in the back. I think that's one of your sort of major interests, isn't it, John? Or certainly a major part of your collection at the moment anyway.
Well, yeah, I have, like, Op Banner is a big part of it, yes, but I sort of collect World War One, specifically the Royal Munster Fusiliers, due to a family member serving in that regiment. World War Two, I always had small bits and pieces, but I've started more collecting it. And I have Irish stuff as well that I have left over. But Op Banner, Falklands, Vietnam from the Australian side would probably be my main areas, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And John has his own, I'll say you just said at the start here, you have your own YouTube channel, obviously Shanahan Military, which I'll put a link to down below, where I think quite a lot of your content recently has been some of your Vietnam kit and your Op Banner kit, but you've obviously got videos on your updating, as you say, your World War II collection's growing as well. So videos up on that. But so we thought we'd have a chat on Skype. As obviously, hopefully in the future we'll be able to meet up at some point, but that's not possible at the moment.
Yeah, well, we've gone back into level 5 lockdown here, so
level 5, right?
Yeah,
okay,
we're not allowed to travel 5 kilometers from your house unless it's for exercise or go to work or things like that.
Dear, oh dear. Right, okay. Well, let's see what 2021 brings. Yeah. But so I say the mannequin behind you set up there looks sort of 80. Well, you've got two. Is it Royal Ulster Constabulary to your right?
I have this one. I've just done a video on him. He's actually Her Majesty's Prison Service.
Oh, HMP. Of course, he's got the scallop pockets and everything as well. That's yes, I can just see that now on the pocket.
The RUC one is there
in the corner. Yeah.
There's a Navy one coming up that is there, and then this one I actually bought as a full collection. He's based on it's a weird one. He's a green jacket, royal green jacket. But I actually have the photo somewhere that the guy that I got it off based it on. And it's in 1984, but he has outdated equipment, if you get me, and stuff.
Yes.
So it could have been just he was a lad that was normally in a camp or something and just, here, get out, you need to do stuff.
So what in terms of outdated equipment?
Well, like his flak jacket, at that time in 1984, they would have had the new improved body armour.
Moving over to an EVA. I would say that is the early 80s jacket though, with the pocket, the radio, the pocket up on the shoulder and stuff like that. So it's on that shoulder, isn't it? But yeah,
it is the 84 type jacket, and then it is the 80 or the lightweight type pants as well. So he's a weird mixed bag. He gets
mixed bag.
I did a video on him, and he gets an awful lot of hardship, shall we say? People that's not right. This isn't right. You know. But
it's like everything else. Is the army never changes kit immediately? There's always got to be a crossover period where you.
But when I first went into the military in '98, the reserve, or the FCA as they were called at the time, they were still using 58 pattern.
Yes.
You know. Yeah. Typical army mentality: if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Like, you know?
Although 58 can be argued to be maybe not the best system, particularly by 98 still being made of cotton and everything. I mean, yeah.
But but like that stuff is kept in stores, and it's just handed out as according to it's needed. Like.
Yes. I'd say it's the same. The British Army was you still see chaps in the 90s using 1958 pattern. It stuck around for quite a while after PLC turned up. Because, as you say, it's hard wearing stuff. I mean, it was still being made in the early 90s. I've got pouches which are dated 1992, which is, a good 2 or 3 years into the production of PLCE, but it was still being manufactured. So, yeah, it is odd how the crossover periods.
Yeah, even when I first went in, like, you'd see guys, especially the older guys, they'd have, let's say, stripped down 58 pattern stuff. And at that time, we were doing cash escorts with bringing money to the banks and stuff. So
Yeah.
they'd use it for that, barrack guards, things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
An interesting one which got me, obviously, when you sent me some, very kindly, just to mention, John sent me some kit, various different batches of kit and military and stuff, and obviously the Mark 6 helmet, which I found interesting, the British Mark 6 helmet, which you guys purchased to use, private purchase.
Yeah, we used to private purchase them if we could get them surplus or anything like that. Mm-hmm. That's what we used to do.
Because the I think you were saying wearing a headset under them is more.
Yeah, we had there was a big like Watergate going on at the time in the Irish Army.
Oh right, okay.
Where there was a lot of guys had lost their hearing through to firing weapons and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
So the big compensations being paid out and stuff like that. So everywhere we had the Israeli type helmets at the time. So everywhere, every exercise, anything, we were always wearing pelter ear protection.
It's annoying because I've got hold of one of those now, and I could. It's not here. It's over in storage. I could show it, show how sort of constricted. Oh, there we go. Yeah, and like I say, on the head, it doesn't give you the room for. Wearing,
so if you were like wearing a headset or your headphones for your pelters, they'd dig into the side of your head here after a while, and you'd get a headache. So 95% of the infantry lads would figure out. You'd see some guys would actually cut the whole sweatband out, and they'd just pad it and put it on their head. Some guys then, like, that's actually my one.
Oh, yes, there we go, yeah, Mark.
So, we'd literally just get the Mark 6 helmet and...
Irish camouflage cover on it, and you're away.
A small bit of unofficial graffiti on it as well.
Yes. Oh, there we go, yes. Ha! Excellent.
Is that? But yeah, we just changed up the chin straps.
Yeah, you've swapped out the chin. Have you swapped out the chin strap there? I didn't see. Yeah, with the Irish. Yeah, well, the Israeli chin strap, chin strap off the Israeli helmet. Yeah, just like the one I have now. Yeah, it's interesting. I always like when I've said this before is when soldiers find solutions and things like that, particularly private purchase. Obviously, I think the British Army became a big thing in the 80s and has been since then.
Yeah,
it's always interesting to see when soldiers do customise their kit in various ways, and that's a nice example of it there. But the issue kit doesn't work as it's intended to, or causes issues.
Even our boots, I still have the boots that I private purchased when I first went into the army, because we had. It's nearly the same as the high boots that the British Army had.
Yes.
Irish country, your feet are going to be wet nearly 90% of the time. So most of us private purchase Mendel Army Pro boots.
I was going to say far superior to the issue boots of the time. Yeah, 90s.
Like they're 20 odd years old now at this stage, and still going strong.
They're going strong. Yeah. It's an odd one because you'd think for obviously, I know the infantry role has changed somewhat over the years and become a lot more mechanised, but there's still a lot of foot slogging involved. You'd think that it would be a priority for an army to get the boots right, and I think perhaps these days you can argue that's the case, obviously with all the different types of boots that the British Army issue and getting good fitting and everything. But for such a long time, boots were bad. It seems strange.
But they'll always. No matter what exercise you do, you could be, we have trucks or we have armored cars or whatever. You're going to end up walking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The trucks are broke. Start walking,
As I say, it just seems such a simple thing. I mean, a good example is the British Jungle Boot, which, again, as I've made a video on, you look at it and you go, okay, yeah, this is essentially the US jungle boot from World War II, canvas and rubber, very flimsy. They decided it was rubbish, so they made the Okinawa boot, basically the double buckle boot, but as a tropical version with bits of canvas added in. And then you get the excellent Vietnam jungle boots. Whereas we took that US design from the Second World War and essentially just carried on making it right the way, and it was used right the way into the 70s. And you think, of all the jungle operations the British Army was conducting through the 50s and 60s, why? Of all the things, okay, a big, national service army, etc., not wanting to spend money, not having money available, but even with a little bit of modification to the design, it could have been improved. It could have been made to drain better and things like this. It just seems such a strange.
Yeah.
Army procurement is always a.
Well,
I don't know, there's
I
always horror
suppose
stories.
like the Irish Defence Forces tours are about 6 months long whenever they're sent abroad or whatever. So I suppose they don't expect the gear to last longer than the actual initial tours, you
I
know.
suppose not. No, no. Still an odd way of doing things to my mind.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. You think it'd be
but
cheap to just give them good gear, but
in the first place and see it last. But I don't know. Someone's probably done the calculation and worked out
yeah,
which way around's cheaper. I don't know. But yeah, it's a strange one. It is a strange one. I think things have improved in recent times, although, well, from a British point of view, certainly the boots and things are better, I think. But now, of course, a lot of the uniform and things are made out in China. So, you know,
well,
it's
as I said, when I initially went into the Irish Army, I went in '98, and around 2000 they changed to the DPMs, or the paddy flashes,
yeah,
it's
the
commonly
camouflage,
referred
yeah,
to.
Irish
Um,
DPM, yeah,
yeah, and like towards the end of my career, or towards the end of my time in the army, there was constantly improvements of equipment.
yeah,
Like they don't wear the PLC webbing anymore. They wear
no,
a battle vest. Their helmets now are pretty much the American style helmet.
Pascal, yeah,
Yeah, you know, even night vision. Like I think I've probably seen night vision or used night vision in my career maybe two handfuls of times. Like,
yeah,
um, but whereas now the lads are nearly constantly wearing it on their head when they're on exercise. You know.
yeah. Well, as I say, that's just been the trend. I think is it technology is inescapable. You can't
Yeah,
military can't do without it these days. But on the subject of DPM, I was quite
yeah,
interested. This sheer number of photos I've found of chaps, obviously again private purchase, but prior to the introduction of Irish DPM of paddyflage, of away from the border certainly on
yeah.
exercise and things, buying surplus British DPM and wearing
Yeah,
it.
I
Which
actually
is a,
I have my initial set that I bought somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah, we all had the DPM.
because the
Uh,
Irish DPM came in shortly after you joined, didn't it? But
yeah, it would have been 2 years after I
2
joined.
years after, yeah, yeah,
Um, but like when I initially joined, we had working dress, which was the same as the lightweights, if you get me.
yes,
We had summer wear, whereas we were allowed to have the lightweights shirt, no jumper.
hmm
Um, then we had winter wear, which was jumper or combat jackets, lightweights, and then you had camouflage, or you had tactical gear. Then we had our own separate camouflage or combat uniform and
yeah,
things like that as well. You know.
yeah. So there's the regulation stuff and then the stuff you're allowed to wear when you're
Yeah,
out on exercise, essentially. Yeah,
and um, then literally when we got to DPMs, it was like, once you have a shirt and a pants on, we don't care. You know.
yeah, yeah. No, it's all interesting, and I mean, I think we've talked about previously in previous chats we've had. Obviously, the sort of Ireland went over to camouflage uniform quite late on, but that
Yeah.
was at least partially due to worries of being mistaken.
That was the rumor. We
Mm.
never officially heard word, but we were always told that the reason that they prolonged bringing in the DPMs was because of border operations and things
Yes.
like that. That they were afraid of blue on blues, or
Mm.
not. Thankfully, not that there was much. There was incidents where stuff happened up there, but
Mm.
they were afraid that we'd be mistaken as British would be mistaken as Irish,
Yes.
like that. So
Yeah. Well, as you say, that does make sense. Whether it's official or not, it
yeah.
would make sense. So, an interesting thing to mention, I guess. But yeah. So, what? Any new additions to the collection recently over the Christmas period? I guess.
Um,
Any you're allowed to any you're happy to admit on video.
well, I have a project at the minute, actually. Sort of a working project.
Oh,
It's
excellent. Yeah.
it's missing its visor,
Yes.
so hopefully that's the upcoming
When
project at the minute.
when did that arrive?
That arrived just prior to Christmas.
Excellent. An
Um,
early Christmas present.
yes, yes. And I am actually waiting on a package that's coming from Australia pre-COVID.
Yes.
So,
I am in the same boat as well, actually. Well, not pre-COVID, but a few months now. I'm waiting on a big parcel of stuff arriving. So,
and I'm actually, it's been so long now, I can sort of remember some things that are in it.
yes.
I know there's a
It'll be a
pixie
nice
shirt
surprise. You'll have
Yeah.
to do an unboxing video of and act surprised when you finally remember what's arrived. Yeah.
I know there's a pixie shirt in it. I know there's a flat hat in it, and I know there's a helmet in it. Other than that, then I don't know.
Excellent.
And I am waiting from Holland. I'm waiting on a South African pattern 70 webbing set.
Oh, excellent. Very nice. Yeah, that's an area I've not delved into yet, but I might do because it is to a degree based on 58 pattern. So it might be an interesting.
I found a story of an Irish guy. I'm not going to mention names or anything because I'm still trying to contact with his family because I want to do a piece on him. But he went to a bit of a Jack the Lad here. Went to the Foreign Legion for a small bit. Got a new name, got a new identity, and went to South Africa or went to Rhodesia, and he fought in the Bush Wars. So I ran into his story. So I'm just trying to track him down. Well, the man has passed away since, but I'm trying to just chat to his family and stuff to get information and things off them.
Well, that'll be interesting going forward, as you say. If it's possible to do, then it'd be very interesting. Excellent.
And the thing about the Rhodesian stuff as well, it is absolutely ridiculous in price now for original stuff.
Well, it's I can understand why. I think when it's a very interesting period of history, and the kit is cool. You know, there's a bit of mystique to it. I think in that regard, the brushstroke camouflage and everything is interesting. So I can understand why it's desirable to collect. Again, it's not an area I've gone down. If I ever buy any of it, I might get a set of What Price Glory shirt and trousers. They're apparently quite good.
Yeah,
but I don't think I'd necessarily go down the original route of Rhodesian kit.
Yeah, like I've had people ask me like, "Sure, you have the true realist, like everything must be original, everything must be original." I like, yes, there is a place. Personally, myself, I believe there's a place for reproductions. When you're not trying to pass off a reproduction as an original piece, I don't have an issue with it at all. Like,
as long as you can get a decent quality reproduction of something. I mean, obviously we were saying about Panther Store BD, and now they're What Price Glory Europe, Central Europe, producing them again. That is an excellent stand-in, and I would prefer to wear that certainly for more active reenacting because you're not putting wear and tear on original uniform. But as you say, it depends. If you can't get a decent reproduction of something, then don't get a dodgy one. If you understand what I mean. I think that would be the only argument I would make. But I agree, there is certainly a place for reproduction out there. I mean, I have reproductions of stuff which I would take to displays by preference, so I'm happier with people handling them. And things like this, as opposed to, the original kit, which is perhaps a little bit more delicate.
Well, I mean, like when you're talking your time frame, like you're talking World War II, First World War, they're your main collection, if you get me, like. And that stuff now is getting frail. It's old.
It is, absolutely.
You don't want people to be handling it. You don't want to be giving people white gloves every time they have to handle it.
No, I'm hoping to actually do a video at some point. We're making a video some point in the new year. Talking a little bit about collection conservation and how to look after it and how to deal with stuff if you do find evidence of moth, for example, what the best things are to do. We'll see about that. That might come up a bit later in the year. Been chatting to someone about doing that.
Sorry for cutting into you, but even
that's fine. No,
the more modern stuff, would say like 58 pattern or the RUC stuff, they're all leather. Their equipment is all leather.
Absolutely.
And that will sweat in the heat and stuff like, so you have to keep an eye on it, and you have to get saddle soap or dubbing or something for it just to keep it clean.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I mean, leather is one of the prime examples of that. It's one of the things that will deteriorate. They deteriorate the worst if you don't look after it. And the classic one is 58 webbing. All these piles of stuff you see at shows where it's sort of mildewed and rotten. Not rotten, being damp and so on. It will rot eventually. It can get damp, dry rot. If it's got damage from being wet, it will eventually deteriorate. So again, even the web equipment, although it is very hardy, needs looking after, and storing in the right way.
like
ideally speaking.
I actually have an original RIC bandolier. Unfortunately, throughout the years,
Oh, the black, yes, the black 1903 stuff, yeah,
you can see it's
yeah.
gotten damaged. Like, so, like, I wouldn't dare bring that to school or a show
No.
or something like that, you know.
I'll have to send you, John. I've got a couple of they're not really fitting. They don't really fit in with my collection, but I've got a couple of the belt pouches that go along with. They're black with white metal fittings.
Oh yeah,
The 15 round pouches.
yeah.
Obviously, they're 1903 pattern, but
Mm.
they are in black for use by RUC. They're of no use to me, so I'll have to send those over to you at some point.
No,
I'll
yeah,
dig,
no.
dig
I have a care package to go to you
there.
anyway. I have
Thank you.
I have
Exchanging things, it's rather nice, but I'll have to put that. I'll dig them out next time I'm over with the rest of the collection, which is still at my grandparents' house in the loft. So when I'm over there next, I'll dig them out and I'll send them over to you because they've come in with lots of bits and pieces of other leather kit.
that's the
And
worst
not,
part. Like, if you get one piece, you want one piece
yeah,
of,
one piece out of, yeah,
but
exactly, yeah.
you end up getting, like, I've got Greek lizard camouflage stuff that I've absolutely no interest in. I have a load of Russian gear that I got
It came in with,
part of a job lot, and I'm like,
yeah.
going, open up a military show so I can go and try and sell this or
Sell
something.
some of the stuff. Exactly, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's very difficult. I say I think people on eBay have done very well out of
Oh, yeah.
as have all online sellers. But yeah, shows are generally the place you pick up some of the best things, unless someone mislists something on eBay and you happen across it. Shows
And
are often the best place to get stuff. But
like, I was actually watching another chap, another military collector. We won't mention names either, but like he does good stuff on reproductions and fakes and stuff that are online on the internet, like or especially on eBay. But you're looking at it some days and you're going, "Oh my God, what are people thinking?" Like,
I
so,
know, yeah, yeah, it is amazing it's amazing what some people will pay for genuine stuff on eBay as well. I mean, I saw a listing this morning that came up just with having looked at something else, and it was in the US, set
yeah,
of 1952 dated British denim battle dress trousers, and they wanted $500 for them.
yeah,
And the reason, apparently, recently with the denim stuff is it's very big on the Japanese fashion market at the moment,
yeah.
and they
And
buy it
like,
to wear, which is yeah,
I was watching an RUC belt.
mm,
It had everything. The one I have is middle 70s, early 80s, but this one was 80s, and
yeah.
it went for over £1,000 sterling.
Good lord.
And I was like going, whew.
Well, I guess your RUC stuff might be, I don't know, increasingly desirable. I know Operation Banner's
The
becoming
yacht
more
banner stuff has
collecting.
gotten huge. Yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose we're in that area now where people are want to remember, whereas before they didn't want to remember what was happened. Um,
perhaps so as well. I think there's also just an element that when something gets to a certain age, it becomes more collectible.
yeah,
Um, I found that stuff that's been very popular on the channel recently has been the Aiden stuff, the 60s, well,
mm,
Aiden and Borneo. The 60s stuff seems to be very interesting. I think perhaps maybe because it wasn't as well known or known at the time, and now it's becoming, people have found it and they're interested in it because it's something new. I don't know. It's also kind of when America was getting involved in Vietnam, and it was
yeah.
what we were dealing with around that time. So I don't know if that.
I the one thing that I find very popular, and I must start doing them again, was I did a series called Headdress of the World, because
Oh yes,
I collected, and I still have a big collection of different berets and caps from around the world.
mm.
But they were like, those videos were, for me anyway, and the Op Banner stuff are the two main ones that I get
So
views on.
do you have? Is it possible to move your camera around, or could we have a little tour of the collection, perhaps, of
Right,
what you
so
have and about?
I
There
don't
we
know
go.
if you can see that. These are the Tupperware boxes.
Yeah.
So that's 58 pattern and World War II pattern weapon. This is M53 Vietnam.
Ah, yes, yeah.
This is a mixture of Russian stuff and Falkland stuff. Then that bottom box is all Op Banner. Then, I don't know if you can see now with the light.
Yeah.
They're pocket fillers.
Yes, small kit now. Yeah.
Then I have radio stuff up here. that red box then has what is in the red box? Parts, straps, bits and
Yes, spare
pieces.
bits and
Yeah.
pieces. See,
Over here then you have.
yeah,
I
there's
don't know if you
the
can see these.
yeah.
That's where the rifles
Oh,
start.
yeah, can see
They
in the
go,
corner there.
they go into here as well. So you have SLRs, SMLE, AK, Mosin Nagant, two SA80s, G3. So,
Excellent. And I say I need to up my mannequin game because I think I need to get a full body. Once we've moved, we're planning to move at some point
yeah.
this year, hopefully. We have a little bit more space. So I think a full body mannequin, it has to go on the list because that will really up the quality of the displays, I think, like
Yeah,
you.
they do, but they take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
Uh, like
The torso
thankfully,
ones stack a lot more. You can just, if we've got a very high ceilings here, so if I
yeah,
don't want them, I've got a bare one next to me here. If I don't want this on the stand, I can put the stand in the corner and put the mannequin
yeah,
torso up on top of the shelves.
yeah.
So it just sits up there, and I have had them dressed on top of the shelves before now and just rotated them round. But a full body one, you do need a bit more
Well,
space for that.
thankfully, I have a very understanding wife, and
Yes, likewise, likewise.
I have my own little room. It's called the war room. She calls it the war room.
The war
But,
room.
I'm being evicted from this room now shortly, and I'm going to be given. I'm in the process of. I bought an old. I have a bit of our back garden is huge, and I have a bit of. I bought an old mobile home,
Oh, excellent. Yes.
so I'm at the process now of redoing the roof on that, and then that's going to be my
Your war
man
room.
man cave slash war room
War
slash
room. Yes.
when I'm in the doghouse.
Shanahan's caravan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But
Excellent.
but like I have shelves over there as well, and that is our drawers that they're full of berets. I think I've over 150 berets now at this stage. Um, then behind the camera, then straight away I have RUC caps. That's actually
Grab one.
this actually came in before Christmas. I don't know if you've seen it, but I need to get the red cover for it.
Oh, yes. Excellent.
Yeah. And the reason it's new issue, if you get me. It's never been issued. But
Lovely condition.
that's going to be done for. I'm doing up another mannequin of the military police, because the military police in Belfast at the time were in charge of the city centre, so they used to man checkpoints and stuff like that. So I need to get the red cover for the top of it. Yeah, but initially I started collecting. Like I always collected bits and bobs, but my main area of collection was headdress, because from working with different units or different armies or whatever, you'd swap caps the whole time.
Yeah, of course. It's an easy thing to give as a memento, isn't it? Sort of thing. Yeah. So it's an easy thing to swap.
Yeah, if lads come back from overseas and whatever, oh, I'm sure John collects that here. You have that. I want this. You know, that's how things have come around.
It's a nice way to build up a collection. It's got more, I guess, almost more meaning to it that way. You know, if you built it up that way, it's.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's something about. I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore, and I don't drink. So like this is my outlet. Like, you know.
Yes.
And I suppose whatever bit of pocket money I have, and it goes into it. But then, like after a while, you get established by your friends, or even like the collection industry and the military market in Ireland is small enough that
yes,
there's only probably 5 to 10 shows every year. So you get to meet guys, and guys are like, "Oh look, I don't like this, or I don't collect this. You do, but you have this," and you swap it around and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a nice way of doing things. And as you say, if it's a small market out there and you can get to know people, all the better. Because people, you know, as you say, invariably will think of you or look out for bits and pieces.
Yeah. But I'm the same. Like if I come across, like I'm not in the hobby for the money, whereas you have guys that are just they're hoarders. They buy it and sell it on and stuff like that. And I look, whatever floats your boat. But if I have something, if I have a spare or something, I'm like, John, why do I need it? Just give it off to somebody that does need it or whatever, like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes around as well then, like.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, definitely. It's a very good way of doing, and as you say, it's a nice way of it's a nicer way of acquiring things. It means you've got a more of a this is this means more because it's filled a hole in my collection, and or vice versa or whatever. And thank you for thinking of me. It's always a nice thing to do it that way. Definitely.
But yeah, because like as I said, as we were just briefed on earlier on there about eBay and things like that, as you see guys and they're selling stuff and it's not worth. Okay, for historical value or things like that, maybe people would pay money. But when you see guys selling genuine forgeries or genuine fakes for ridiculous,
yeah, it is a problem that I think. Well, I don't know if it's growing or whether it's been around for a while. It's certainly happened at shows in the past. I think eBay just makes it slightly easier because you're showing stuff to a bigger, perhaps less informed audience. But there is a lot of fake stuff out there. In fact, well, there have been legal cases about it. There have been people actually have had legal proceedings brought against them for selling fakes and things through eBay. No, I'm going into details, but selling things with. I think one of the biggest things is perhaps selling one of the most disingenuous things is selling what is perhaps a genuine item, but with made-up provenance.
Oh yes,
that can be. This is such and such is cap or whatever.
It's like these, like they're. I don't know if you know what those are. They're detonators for demo charges, right? So I mean, what you'd come across them at shows in boxes for maybe €2 or €3 or £2 or £3 or whatever, but all of a sudden that's up on eBay as demolition charge used at Tora Bora in Afghanistan by the SAS, and £50.
Yeah. It is. SAS is always a classic one. Is stick SAS on the listing. The best is when it's something like a pair of underpants or something like that.
Oh yeah.
SAS in the title, and you think, right, okay, yeah. They probably were issued that. However, so was the rest of the British Army.
Green SAS socks.
Yeah, it is a favourite. Is SAS? It's quite funny to just go on eBay sometimes and just go on the Militaria tab and type in SAS and see what comes up.
Oh yeah.
Because it can be quite amusing at times, but it's like everything else. It's people just trying to push what they have to sell.
That's it, like as well, and especially with eBay, if you have lots of time in your hands, which we all probably have now at the minute.
A bit more time on hands than normal, yeah.
Yeah, but like if you type in, let's say op banner, just type in op banner.
Yes.
Then do a search and see what you find. Then type in Northern Ireland Troubles, see what you find. If you word it different ways, you can come across different things that have been listed different ways and stuff like that. Definitely.
So you can definitely find stuff that's not perhaps listed to best advantage that way, which means you sometimes get better prices on things. But it's eBay can be hit and miss.
We shouldn't be giving away all the tips, really, should we?
Well, no, it's not so much. I think most people who buy on eBay probably know most of the wrinkles out there to find bits and pieces, but it's hit and miss because I think one of the biggest problems with it is the minute something sells for a silly price, that is sort of then taken as the new silly price that things are worth, even though, well, no, up to this point, none of those have sold for this price and someone's got into a silly bidding war on this particular example. That does not mean that all of these in existence are now worth that much money, but that seems to be the way it's taken,
But like the trouble, I had to try and get one of those helmets.
Is that with the riot visor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one stage, they were selling for astronomical prices.
And to be clear, it's just interesting thing people might not know is they were also issued to Irish troops as well.
When I did my riot training, that's what I wore.
Yeah.
And we had a baton the exact same as that.
Yeah, yes, the same pattern of baton. Yes. Yeah, there's some good photos actually of Irish troops wearing the Mark IV
Yeah, we
riot
we
helmet.
we call them turtles. Was
Turtle. Well, they are. Yes, indeed.
yeah.
That is the standard nickname for them, sort of thing. Yeah.
I leave
But
this
as
on.
you say, they were they were sought after for a time. I managed to pick one up at, we have a big show at
Yeah,
Stoneleigh Park in the UK. Well, we normally do. It isn't on this January. I think it's been deferred until May. Whether that will go ahead, I don't know. But I managed to pick one up there for, I think, about £35, which
yeah.
wasn't too bad. But as you say, if they come up on eBay, they can go for silly money.
Oh yeah. Even the we'll say just the regular ones with no
They
visor
are
on.
getting more expensive now, yeah. Unless you buy them unless you buy them at a show or a private listing on Facebook or somewhere like that. Sometimes they have good prices.
And,
Yeah, as you say, they for some reason. I'm glad I bought a stack of them because I bought quite a few. Whenever I've seen them at a good price, I've picked one up thinking, oh, I can do that in a different color because they're all in that matte black
yeah,
paint with all the marks on them from being stored stacked together.
yeah.
A lot of them are anyway.
Rings around them from just sitting on top.
So from where the liners have degraded, so you always think when it's going to need repainting anyway. So I don't mind putting a different color. So I've, as seen in the Mannequin of the Month, I've done one in a sand color for use in sort of South Arabia, well, in desert environments. I've got one in a bronze green color, which is sort of the standard vehicle paint at the time they used to slap on them, and I've got a couple which are camouflaged up. I might have one still in black somewhere, possibly, but it's oh no, I've got one which is in a textured green finish, which is the original finish it
Yeah,
came in. So I have them for different theatres and so
yeah,
forth, which is
yeah,
useful. But I'm glad I bought them when I did because now
yeah.
they are 25 quid a helmet in some instances, which is there are still lots of them around, but for some reason they're commanding a higher price, and I don't know why.
But
Um,
like even the we'll say the Mark Six public order right helmets.
mm,
Like
yeah,
um, I have I have an actual kit to redo another one. I have one here, but the cover is on this one.
yes,
So I
yes,
want to do one without the cover.
mm-hmm.
Because the reason that the guys used to take the covers off them was because if they got petrol bombed, this would melt and stick to them.
Oh,
So
interesting. And come
uh,
across.
the reason that they didn't have the covers initially at the start in the 80s.
Yeah,
So I just want to have, I have actually all the bits for it. But even to pick up a Mark 6 now is,
yeah,
uh, you're talking a good condition one here in Ireland, you're talking 40, 50 euros, like,
really.
compared to when we used to
They,
buy them in surpluses for £15, like.
yeah, it's lucky they still do turn up at shows
Yeah,
for that. Actually, not a military show. We went to Great Dorset Steam Fair the other year, and there was a chap with a box of them, and I ended up because I bought a few.
yeah,
Uh, they were £10 each, which was good.
yeah.
But that's a rarity, I would say. You don't tend to, and they weren't in the best condition. They'd got damp at some point. The leather inside was mildewed and a bit tacky, but they were what they were, so you pick them up, sort of thing. It's
I,
one
I,
of
I think the whatever about berets and P caps and things like that, but definitely helmets. I mean, when you wear at shows and stuff like that, you see guys buying them for their kids.
mm,
You'd always see a child running around with an M1 American
yeah,
helmet on. Um, so I suppose that it's demand really because most kids end up well personally myself headdress it's easier to collect than
yes, yeah,
than going into the nitty gritty detail and stuff. Um, so for younger people collecting that, most of the guys that I know started collecting headdress,
yeah.
one way or another.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. It just going back to kids and stuff though. I think it's interesting the amount of stuff that must have been bought surplus, which is now collectible, but it was bought for almost to play with. It
Oh
was
yeah,
bought toys for kids and stuff. I know I got what I'm pretty sure was a World War II M36 US pistol belt at a
yeah,
show, just to wear as a dad bought it for me when I was a kid,
yeah,
just to wear as an army belt. And I look back now and think it probably wasn't a lot of money. It was probably just in a bin of belts.
yeah.
And yet, I don't know where it is now, is the sad thing. It's disappeared. But I'm absolutely certain, looking back on what it was a US,
But
probably World War II era
even
pistol
my
belt.
grandfather and great grandfather stuff.
Mm,
I know for a fact that was original First World War and Second World War stuff. We used to have a Lee Enfield bayonet,
Mm.
and I don't know whatever happened to them. It was one of the long ones for the SMLE.
Yeah.
That was used to open tins of paint.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, and I'm thinking to myself now, if I knew back then what I know now, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
As I say, the amount of stuff that was, I mean, if you think battle dress is collectible now, in the post-war years, it was being burned for the brasses, and also they actually cut the stuff up and ploughed it into the ground as fertilizer.
yeah,
It's organic material; it'll rot down, and it's crazy, really. Yeah, but that's some of the stuff that happened to this stuff.
yeah,
Anything, and it's particularly anything that wasn't the stuff that survived is stuff that wasn't necessarily usable, so odd sizes and things like this. But gas capes are another example. Gas capes were used as waterproofs. They were sold
yeah.
almost as sort of a couple of times use waterproofs in walking shops and stuff for a time until the stocks run out. And obviously they'd be ideal for that, but they were very flimsy, so they got used for a bit, and then they'd be ragged, and that was it. They'd get thrown away.
Well, sure,
So,
you're around the same vintage as me, shall we say?
mm.
Uh, like the East German stuff.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
during the 80s, everyone had a smock or a shirt or a pair of combats or stuff.
Oh,
Um,
immediate post, yeah. I say in the 90s, immediate post
yeah,
fall of the wall. The amount of East German stuff, and well, I saw it at shows as a kid,
yeah,
and then obviously through the early 2000s, it was still ridiculously cheap everywhere, and you could buy
yeah,
whatever you wanted basically. But now stocks are beginning to dry up, and
yeah.
it's becoming more expensive. Interestingly, just shows you everything has its period of being surplus, and then
Like I bought a collection there not so long ago. Well, it wasn't a collection; it was a job lot. I have a gentleman up the north that I
mm,
deal with, and he actually happened to come across uh, complete East German uniform,
yes,
pants, shirt, tie, the whole lot, and I got it for like £25 off him. I was
mm,
like, yeah, no problem, give me it, because even if I don't use it, it's there in the future for, look, I have something to swap, or I have
yeah,
this, you know.
absolutely, yeah. With someone who does collect that stuff,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. It's, I mean, as you say, with having sort of contacts and stuff, it's always great. Always,
yeah,
it's useful to have stuff, as you say, that you can perhaps trade with people,
yeah,
or just move on to people who are interested in it. If you see something at a good price, and
yeah.
you know it's a good price, then it's often worth picking it up. Um, I'm very lucky. I think some of the better bits I've had have been from friends. I mean, I'm just looking over here at the riot shield, which is just off to my right here.
Yeah.
There's no way I would have found that on the open market.
Oh yeah.
People just, well, I don't think they'd sell them.
But like
But
but to try and find the pre one to that, the steel one,
yes,
like
oh, yeah.
you're
I know
yeah,
where there is. I know where there is one. There's one in the Airborne Assault Museum,
yeah,
and I had pondered seeing if John and talked to him about it, see if we could get some measurements from it and maybe make one,
mm,
because they were used in Cyprus as well. So they're quite an
yeah,
interesting. They'd be an interesting piece of. They're an interesting piece of the development of riot gear, British Army anti-riot gear. It's something I'd like to cover in a video in the future, because I've got obviously the Mark IV helmet with visor. I've got the Cromwell helmet. I don't have the Stadium helmet, but I have an example of the Cromwell, and then the Mark VI with. There we go. Yes, excellent. And the Mark VI with the neck protector and the visor.
yeah.
I'd like to do, and obviously I've got a selection of body armor to look at. It would be nice to do a video looking at some of the changes. That it wouldn't be comprehensive, because
Progression.
that would be ridiculous amount of detail to go into. But to give an idea of how it changed from the very first days of 1969 through to certainly at least the 80s. But that's a project for the future, perhaps. We'll see.
Well, like you could sort of timeline, like Soldier 95 or the 95 equipment was one big change when you see stuff
Yes.
changing in the north. Around 84, definitely after the Falklands, you see stuff changing.
Absolutely.
From the Falklands until they initially went in the 60s, there was very, very little changes. Like,
The biggest change you actually see quite a big change in around 71, 72. In '72, the British Army almost did sort of a Soldier 95 thing in that there was a lot of new kit came out in '72. You get things like the nylon poncho. You get the green KF shirt rather than brown. You get the woolly pulley. The new woolly pulley comes in a big way. You get the '68 pattern camouflage uniform comes in a big way. Prior to that, obviously, you'd have the '60 pattern in DPM. So you've got in '72, you actually have quite a big change, although it would take a little while to actually take effect with everything. So you've almost got the '69, you've got the British soldier as he very much looked in the 1960s, and then by '72 you have the soldier how he will look for the rest of the 1970s, basically. As you say, from that point on, a lot of the kit. The '70s was quite static in terms of
kit. You see that with kit across the board. Let's say if you started the First World War, you'll see like massive changes in the war years, and then
absolutely
plateaus.
If you look at the soldier of 1939 and the soldier of 1918, other than an adaptation of the respirator and slight changes to the cut of the uniform, obviously modification of the helmet, the actual visual effect of the overall uniform is very, very similar. Obviously, there are small detail changes, the helmet liner, the chin strap, etc., that sort of thing. But if you put them next to each other, they look very similar. Respirator on the chest, service dress, puttees, new equipment, I suppose, but that's driven by the change of weapons, of course, more than anything else. And some men were still wearing 1908, so yeah.
But even I think you did a video on it. Even the difference in berets.
Oh,
like, like at one stage there were what we used to call helicopter pads.
That's right.
This round disc on top of their head, and then definitely after the Falklands and stuff like that, you see the small crowns coming in with and shaped better.
The late '70s, you start to see the small crown. They seem to have. I don't have a date for this, but in the '70s, at some point, you get the change to the you don't have the eyelets anymore in the side for ventilation, and you get the cloth band rather than the leather, which then changed again back to leather. But that's when the major change in beret size seems to have happened. And prior to that, of course, men were shrinking them. That became the fashion. But right the way through into the '60s, you see chaps in '69, not Banner, who are still wearing big berets. So it seems to be during the '70s that this sort of really this change really came, that you say you end up with the much smaller crown.
Like
it's interesting how almost it becomes a fashion. It becomes the trend. It becomes to have a smaller and a differently shaped beret.
Like they're like, so as we said earlier on in the video, like soldiers are very, very ingenious, and when they will push the boundaries as much as they possibly can to see what they can get away with. When I went in, you'd see guys and they had their berets shaped pretty much the English way, where it was just like badge over the left eye and pull to the right. Then you'd see guys scraping in where it was the American style of the big
sort of
like
pulled up bit behind the back.
My one is actually shaped that way, so it's not exactly very clean at the minute, but so.
Oh yes, there we go. Yeah, with the big.
So that's how we wore ours, like.
Yeah, that definitely is the American style.
Yeah, so you'd see the older boys would have it something like this, where it was just
over the side,
yeah. And then you had guys that, for whatever reason, like the French Foreign Legion style, and their badge was nearly here.
Nearly there, around on the ear. Yeah, you see that occasionally with British berets. I've seen a Royal Engineer, Commando Royal Engineer, with his green beret with his badge right round, still sort of over the eye, but right round on the side of the temple here. In a recent photograph, I can't remember whether it was a photograph I saw recently. Rather, I can't remember exactly when it was from. So yeah, as you say, I think, of course, the classic one with the Brits is the chaps who wore headsets who would pull the badge down to the middle and have it
nearly like a flat cap.
The Germans, you see the Panzer troops do. It's very similar. The shape you end up with, but it is interesting.
But even different battalions in the same unit will have little changes so that they can tell themselves apart.
Yes,
like when I was in a battalion in Cork, we wouldn't wear gold paper behind our cap badge so you could see the red through the cap badge.
Right.
Whereas a company would get gold cigarette paper and put it behind their cap badge.
Right. So that it didn't look like a voided
Yeah.
badge, it looked like
Yeah.
a solid gold badge. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
very interesting.
you could tell differences like that as well.
You
Another
almost
way
who
was
started the trend, you know, who started that? You almost wonder where how did this originate, you know?
It was just lads sitting in the canteen going, "That looks cool. I'm going to try
Yeah.
that."
Yeah. And then they got away with it and it spread.
Yeah.
There's a story. Speaking of cap badges, there's a story I love, which was it one of the battalions of the parachute regiment when Britain's. Now I'm probably going to get this story wrong, but I think it was the Airborne Beret when the Airborne Beret was first issued, and they didn't get the cap badge for the new regiment, the parachute regiment cap badge, and they were still wearing their old regimental cap badges, but on the Airborne Beret, as I remember. And there were one or two blokes. The CO had poor, let's say, he had poor eyesight, and they got away with wearing an ATS, the female, the British Army's female unit, women's unit, female unit, women's unit during the Second World War, the ATS. They got away with wearing ATS cap badges for a short time because why not? Let's try and get away with it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting little story. I can't remember I'm gonna have to look that up and maybe make a little video on that because it's whether it's apocryphal or not, I don't know, but it's a nice little story.
Like there was a funny story when we first got the DPMs, because prior to us getting the DPMs, the only ones that had DPMs, no, it was a different pattern. It was a darker pattern. Were the Rangers.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And sure, when we all had the DPMs, then they got the same uniform. But I was chatting to a friend of mine in our barracks. They were doing a training exercise nearby, so he just happened to be in the barracks, and we had trained together, and he'd gone on and done selection and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he had no beret on, and he had his hands in his pockets, and just they don't care anyway most of the time.
Yeah.
So this reserve officer just happened to be walking past at the same time, and tried to tear strips off him. Like, "Where's your headdress? Get your hands out of your pockets." So he puts his hand into his pocket, puts on a Ranger.
Quietly, just quietly puts his Ranger beret on.
Yeah. You could see your man go white and just carry on. Like.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So the Ranger camouflage prior to the standard issue Irish DPM, it was similar but a darker Ranger.
Yeah, it was nearly the same colours as the British DPM, but it was the same pattern as the Irish one.
Yes.
If you get me.
Got you. Interesting. I bet that's rare to find.
Extremely rare. Well, when you consider the Rangers, and there's probably only about, I couldn't tell you for definite. They're very, very secretive, but there's only maybe 200 or 300 of them on the books at one time, if that even.
Yeah.
And
so not much of it made, and obviously.
No. I don't know. Before they used to get a budget.
So they had unit purchasing power.
Yeah. They could literally get whatever they wanted to get. And then you had ingenious quartermasters, shall we say, that would write to Mendel and go, "I need 50 pairs of trial boots."
Mm-hmm.
And then write to Danner and go, "I need 50 pairs of trial boots."
Yes.
The lads would all get free boots, and then the next thing, there would be a letter sent back going, "Boots did not meet trial purposes," whatever.
Yes.
So everyone there'd be 100 pairs of free boots, but
brilliant.
Yeah.
That's excellent. That's how. Yeah. Well, perhaps not how it should be, but I'm sure it's how it is in a lot of situations.
Oh yeah. Like as I said, like soldiers are very, very ingenious, and especially the older guys. They've been around the block and they know how to shave corners, if you get me.
Yes.
Funny things like I can remember with a big arms inspection one day, and the guys were pulling rifles. What happened would be the officer would come in and he'd sit at the desk and he'd go down through the book, and the storeman he'd tell him, "Pull this rifle, pull that rifle," or whatever, and then he'd inspect them to see were they clean and had to be done right or whatever. So he was like, "Pull this rifle," or whatever. So I pulled the rifle, storeman stripped it down, gave it to him. And the CO, who was the CO, actually decided to go off on a tangent that this rifle is absolutely walking, it's dirty, it's rusty, it's this and that or whatever. Who owns it? Put him on a charge, and the storeman went, "It's yours."
Ah,
So yeah.
excellent. Yes.
So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Oh dear.
So things like that happened.
Need to be careful. Yeah, I was going to say that's yeah.
Oh, the storeman knew what he was doing because he probably didn't remember what number he was after calling out.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's. I'm sure it was entirely intentional.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh
Yeah.
dear. I love stories like that.
But getting back to the collection side of it as well, like I mean,
yes, yeah.
like the Rangers had their own powers when it came to purchasing stuff. They had their own. I don't know if they still do, but definitely when I was around, they had their own budget that they could pretty much.
It's not uncommon because I know a lot of special forces might not be the right. Certainly in British, a lot of them, the Royal Marine Commando units had their own purchasing power, which is why they ended up in the Falklands with their own boots, for example, and bits of their own web equipment and things like this, rucksacks, and sometimes they were unit purchases rather than individual private purchase and so forth. So it's not uncommon. I wouldn't be surprised if that was still the case.
To a certain degree, each company or each battalion would have their own powers as well, if you get me. Like you'd see regimental kit being bought or battalion kit being bought for football teams or things like that. They would have their own purchasing power for things like that. Normally as well, at the end of the exercise season, as we used to call it, they'd have like a big barbecue and we could bring families and stuff to.
So you had funds for that sort of recreational stuff as well, on the side, that makes sense.
But when it came to the nitty gritty equipment and kit and webbing and things like that, that was all resourced.
That was all your central stores and everything. Yeah. I say it was an interesting pickup recently. The PLC, the utility pouch, which I don't know if the video will have been up yet, but I've made a little video looking at that in comparison to obviously British PLC. So make a more in-depth video on that in the future. But it's interesting. It's interesting how they just adapted the design slightly, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk some about the.
But sorry. Like that, let's say like John would say you have like this is the Mark 1 version, this is the Mark 2 version, this is the Mark 3 version. To actually be a soldier and end up with an entire Mark 1 equipment set or an entire like because everything would be in a box and they just go, there's a yoke, there's a belt, there's a and
it goes together, put it together, there you are. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same. This is people can get a bit finicky. I mean, in a Second World War context, it's even funnier because the sheer quantity of stuff that was made, you'd likely have mismatched braces that have been made in different ways. Nothing's going to match in terms of dates. Now, I understand collectors wanting to do that. That's fine. Completely understand the idea of wanting to put a 1940 set of MECO equipment together. It's a nice thing to do as a collecting activity. But for those who in the reenacting world are putting together something to accurately reflect a soldier, you don't need everything to be dated. But for the date you're portraying, and it doesn't all have to match. Blanco does, but in terms of the actual components and the way they're manufactured, you might have one Mark II and one Mark III pouch. It
but
doesn't,
But like no two soldiers, they look unless you're out on trooping of the colour or unless you're out on a ceremonial thing, then everyone is exactly the same. Everyone, like you have a sergeant major going up with his swagger stick and he's poking you every now and again going, get a haircut, whatever.
Yes.
But when you go onto the field, like anything goes.
Yeah,
literally.
It's particularly it's one of the issues. I think the biggest issues I have is anything post probably mid-70s, maybe a little earlier for some units. You start to get into the situation of this mannequin is not going to be representative of any in any way, shape, or form. It's going to be representative of maybe one or two individuals, or maybe a small subunit who all did it in this particular way. They all carried the cape carrier from the 58 pattern in a particular way above the rear pouches, for example. maybe a small unit all did it the same, but it's not going to be the same for every British Army soldier of the time, because by that point everyone was doing things a little bit differently here and there. And that's one of the biggest problems, I think, with trying to recreate mannequins and stuff from that period. It's not going to be right for everyone, which is why I always try and caveat and say, this is one example taken from photographs. You probably did it differently, you know.
But like field gear wise, like certain things would be standard. We'll say in our Bergens, on the top of our Bergen, the top pocket on our Bergen, that's where we carried the spare ammunition for the general purpose machine gun.
Yeah.
And everyone carried it in the same pocket. So if you rent a bag, you go, okay, that's where
it's in there. Yeah.
The ammo is. Everyone carried on your right hand hip was where your first aid kit was. And everyone knew that's where his first aid kit was, and his field dressing is going to be on the pocket on his sleeve. But after that, God only knows where something could be like.
Yes. Now that brings up a question, John, because with I know that even the last pattern of green combat uniform, and I don't know if it's just trials or some of the early Irish DPM uniform still had the dressing pocket down on the leg of the trousers. Did you carry dressing in the trousers, or was it carried in another pocket elsewhere?
Sorry, which now?
So you know the British battle dress trousers have that pocket specifically for the dressing, and even on the set of the sort of 1980s, 1990s green Irish combats I have, they still have that sort of oblong pocket with the single button at the top. Did you carry? Can you?
We carried it in a pocket in the smocks. The same as the 84 pattern.
Got you. Yeah.
And then if we were out on exercise, sometimes, not all the time, I'll just show you here now. No, it's not the same thing. But if you notice on the steyr, we would tape a field dressing.
Yeah.
To either the sling or there was a gap in the middle that you could fit it between where the cock and handle would come back and the ejection port.
Got you. Yeah. Some interesting footage actually. I went on the RTE archives recently, and there's some footage, from the late 80s of the steyr being trialled, which is quite interesting.
There's a funny story about the steyr. It's called the butter gun in the Irish Army.
Oh right, okay.
Myth or legend has it that when they were trying out moving from the SLR, go from 7.62 to 5.56.
Yes.
They were in the weapons wing in the Curragh. They were testing out a few different weapons, and I think they had the M4 or the American M16. They had the steyr. They had an Israeli Galil variant. They had something that they got from the Czech Republic, and they had a load of these different rifles anyway. Trying, and basically we couldn't have the M16 because we were in Lebanon at the time, and they didn't want to show us being, because the Irish overseas in UN duty is unique in the fact that we don't have any colonial baggage.
Yeah.
We don't have any alliance to the US. We did at one point in time have an alliance to the UK, but like we weren't involved in.
I think not in NATO is a big part of it as well in that regard. Yeah.
So the Irish overseas are very unique in the fact that they can go into situations that other units can't go into. So that was part of the reason that we couldn't get either the Israeli Galil or the M16. So they decided that we're going to get this Czech thing that everyone was going, no, don't get that because it's crap. But some officer,
some UK derivative possibly.
Yeah, some officer in the UK or in the Department of Finance or wherever figured out that Austria at the time had a butter shortage.
Oh right, okay.
And one thing that we had lots of was butter. So that was part of the thing. Part of the exchange program was, we'll give you butter, you give us rifles.
That's fantastic, because it's the old phrase is guns or butter, and I love that. Yes, guns for butter. Yeah,
so they became known as the butter guns.
The butter guns, yeah. Excellent. I like that. That's a nice little story.
Now, that was just a legend that we were told.
Absolutely, yeah. No, fair. Completely happy to take it on as sort of the apocryphal tale, but I like it. That's good.
But that's part of the culture too. Is like you'll always have like,
tall tales.
Yeah, ball hops as we used to call them.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Like I can remember the lads coming back for going to East Timor.
Oh yes, you mentioned this. Yeah,
and the big thing was when they were swapping around with the new guys, they'd tell them, right, watch for drop bears. And the lads going, what's a drop bear?
Yeah.
Like they're bears that fall out of the trees and they'll tear the face off you. And the lads like going, literally going out to the bathroom at night with a rifle going, where are these drop bears?
Brilliant. Excellent stuff. Oh dear. Well, you say you got a little bit of Aussie kit, didn't you, from your some bits and pieces from your time on East Timor?
I have it's up there in the backpack actually. I have a full it's going to be changed around at the minute. I'm going to do a video on it. I have a mini-me loadout for the guys that were carrying the mini-me's. I have the backpack, I have the full uniform, the bush cap, their boots even. I have the boots. Were
they still the GP, the sort of
they were
the GP? Like oh yes, I know that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the tan GP boot. Yes.
So that's coming up. That's coming up in a video. That was all exchanged from a guy, East Timor veteran. The beret as well. I did a beret on the Royal Australian Regiment.
Yes, you did a video looking at the beret and the cap badge. Yeah.
That was he gave it to me, and then I actually have a genuine. And the reason I know it's genuine is because he gave it to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it's genuine. Australian SAS beret.
Excellent.
And like that, as we mentioned earlier on, if somebody said this is SAS, this is whatever, I'd be going, yeah. Unless your man is actually physically badged SAS and handing it to me, then I'd be going,
yeah. I have the point actually. I've not something I'll quickly show. It is something I have. Oh, respirator that's falling down. I haven't shown this in a video yet, but this was a pickup a little while ago, 1969. I have no idea if my webcam's going to be good enough here.
Yeah.
But
SAS.
It's 1969 SASR beret, which will be part of when hopefully this year. This year now, do more displays at the Huey hangar. Yeah. I want to do another Australian or Anzac display there and take some mannequin heads and display some headdress. So this will be part of that.
The one I have now actually is they have the black band rather than the actual tan band.
Yes, it's quite distinctive that with the tan nylon edging around the actual edge of the beret there. I realised that probably something that influenced my interest in Australian involvement in Vietnam was before I really got into collecting. I was really still a kid at the time. I watched The Odd Angry Shot, which I really enjoyed. And of course, they're all wearing these, and it was very nice from there was almost a childlike glee and managed to pick one up, having seen the film all those years ago.
Well, I think there's definitely a few films that stick in my head of influenced me towards collecting. One was The Light Horseman. I don't know if you ever remember.
Oh that. yes,
about the light horse in Palestine at the time. Gallipoli was another one that influenced me, and then like. When I was a kid, my dad, he was like Sunday was his day. He'd work Monday to Saturday, and Sunday was his day. And don't even attempt to pick up a sweeping brush. Sunday is a day of rest.
Yes.
And I can remember sitting down with him when I was a kid, and the fire would be on, and he'd be sitting down drinking tea or whatever, and he'd be watching the likes of the Carry-Ons.
Oh yes, of course. Yes.
But you had stuff then like Sink the Bismarck, A Bridge Too Far,
classic war films. Yes.
Yeah, the Longest Day, things like that. Like those films sort of stick in my head as well. About
probably influenced the collecting side.
No, they wouldn't be the best films in the world to sort of go for genuine.
Oh no, indeed not. No. Oddly, if you actually look at A Bridge Too Far, with exceptions of Land Rovers. Obviously, the vehicles are a bit dodgy, but the actual uniforms and stuff, they didn't do too bad a job, really, all
No,
things considered. For the time,
yeah.
for the 70s, they really did do quite
I
a good job in that regard.
I think when you look at the forums and stuff, I think like Joe, you have I call them bean counters or rivet counters. So there should be there's 10 balls. There should only be 6.
Yeah.
So but like
You have to take war movies with a pinch of salt. I
yeah,
think today there's less excuse because there are so many restored vehicles and CGI and so forth. You
yeah.
can make things look right so easily.
But
But back then they had to work with what was available in terms of vehicles and
but not only that, like we said, the war films that they're making now at the minute, I suppose what would the last few have to come out would have been off the top of my head. You'd have like Danger Close.
Danger Close, yeah.
Yeah, The Lone Survivor.
You've had the recent Dunkirk film,
Yeah,
well, relatively recent.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like definitely with Danger Close, you would have had guys from there on the set. And,
Well, of course, they did with A Bridge Too Far. They
Yeah.
they had the original officers involved were there as advisors, so that definitely helps, I think, in terms of making it. Of course, the same with We Were Soldiers.
Yeah.
Although that did perpetuate some possible myths.
But
It's a film. This is the thing. I think if people look at there's the expectation that they'll make a good effort to be as accurate as possible, but you can never look at a war movie as a documentary.
Yeah.
The chap who made, I don't know if it's the chap who made, but they're closely linked. There is a documentary available on YouTube about the Battle of Long Tan,
and they're nearly the same
film. Yeah, the same chap. So you've got the two elements of it there. You've got the dramatization in the film, and you have a very in-depth documentary.
Well,
they should, there's room for both. It's.
But if you watch the film prior to watching the documentary, or if you watch the documentary prior to watching the film, you can nearly from the documentary follow the timeline.
Yes, you can. They fit together very well. There's another good example of that, I would actually say, where you can take almost a war film and use it as a primer for further study of the topic, and that's Waterloo.
Yeah,
the Soviet-Italian Waterloo movie. That actually, in terms of the chronology of the battle and so forth, is a useful thing to get your head around what went on throughout the day before you look at it in more depth. Now, obviously, you can't take it in and of itself as a historical source, but it's a good big picture thing to give you an idea of what was happening, and then go and look at it in further depth. I think there are perhaps a few films that fulfill that role.
Yeah.
But
Well, I was actually last night. I was working and I was reading on a forum. Just because I had a bit of downtime, I was reading on a forum of films and things like that, and people how to make things authentic and authenticity and people's resources and stuff like that. Like, and there was this random debate going on, or this like that war crimes or incidents in films when it came to the Allies was sort of brushed over, but when it came to the Germans or the Axis, there was like pandemonium over it, and there was like 2 incidents. One they brought up was Band of Brothers, whereas the guys were driving by in a truck, and there was French guys taking Germans out of a shed and just shot them. And then the other one was the opening scene in Saving Private Ryan, when they got to the top of the beaches, or they got to the top of the bunkers, and one of the Germans comes out, Nick Sheets, and hand a hook or whatever, and your man said, "What did he ask?" And they shot him.
Yeah.
And it is an interesting thing. Well, I went down a rabbit hole when I started looking at it. But like if that had been done in a film or a documentary about the Axis, people would be going, "Oh, they were criminals, they were war crimes or whatever." But because it was done by the Allies, people don't seem to care, or not. What I want to say, they don't care, but they just
no. The argument, I agree, and it kind of fits into the history is written by the victors narrative. Yeah. A good example was, I think you can take from naval warfare, was Admiral Dönitz at the Nuremberg trials, as I remember. They pinned on him the fact of leaving men to die after torpedoing ships and so forth. And a US Navy admiral, I forget who it was, came along and said, well, our submarines had exactly the same order in the Pacific. So we can't hold that, okay, maybe it is a war crime.
Yeah.
And that kind of, that balance, they went, well, we won't prosecute this too much. In war, horrific acts or immoral acts, I mean, war in itself
is immoral.
So the philosophical arguments regarding war itself as one big entity, I think is probably a bit too big for this chat. But there will always be bad things that happen, and both sides will do bad things.
Oh yeah.
I think that the differences and the reason that there's more outrage is that it was more systematic on the side of the Axis, and was obviously that ties into the Nazi ideology in a big way. But I mean, in terms of soldier on soldier, as perhaps, that happened both ways. Men, I'm sure, surrendering Japanese and German and Italian soldiers were shot out of hand. I'm sure that will be beaten up or whatever, and vice versa. We know this happened. A good example, obviously, from the German point of view, is in France when, in the early stages of the war, when perhaps people don't think these things were happening as much, but they obviously.
When the grenade at the sheds with the
grenade, exactly. And yet, I'm absolutely certain, on the other hand, we perhaps don't hear as much about it. There will be situations where your average German soldier was shot when trying to surrender, be it due to a language barrier or just be it to the soldier not having, oh, sorry, it's been a bad day, bang,
But I think in the collecting world, getting back to what we're talking about, in the collecting side of the world, is definitely for me, front banner. Did the British do things that were absolutely wrong? Yes, 100%. Did the RUC do things that were wrong? Absolutely, 100%. Did the IRA and the paramilitaries do things that were wrong? Absolutely, 100%. But you have to understand that and sort of go.
It shouldn't preclude you having an interest in.
Yeah, well, no, not. But when you say about Second World War, I'm just using that banner as a thing, like. But when you go to Second World War, the Allies would never have done that. Yes, they would.
They would, and they did. Yeah, we know for a fact. Well, the war in the Pacific is perhaps the starkest example, because there was, I think in some instances it was spoken, but almost a no prisoners policy.
Yeah.
Partly because of what Japanese prisoners did when they would sabotage and so forth. But once they'd been captured, they might have a grenade hidden that they'd then let off or whatever. So that's understandable, perhaps, but it's still not right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that in a position of stepping back. But the problem of course, is you say, well, you've not been in a war, and exactly that. I understand it at the time. It was justifiable and made sense, perhaps, but it wasn't good. You can't then say it's good. That doesn't mean it's a different justification of it. Necessary, even maybe you'd say, but not.
The point I'm trying to make is when you go to a show, right, whatever, and there's a guy and he's walking around as the Waffen SS. Fair enough. Okay, whatever, right? Okay. He knows himself. Authenticity, if he was to portray things right or whatever, that unit recorded has been involved in war crimes.
Yes, absolutely.
But then people will go up to him and an allied side or whatever, and you could be. I'm not going to mention any regiments because I'm not going to be accused of saying that this regiment.
No, indeed. But yeah.
But you have a guy dressed up as whatever regiment that fought in the Pacific, and you're like, oh, ye did such a great job in the Pacific or whatever, well done or whatever. That same regiment, that same unit, that same group, possibly could have carried out war crimes.
Absolutely. I think you can't detach it's a mistake to detach the brutality of war from that. It wasn't a group of supermen. It was blokes thrust into positions where they, in some instances, ended up doing terrible things, and on both sides. As I say, I think the difference is obviously the systematic nature of it on the Axis side against the civilian populations of the countries they overran is more. I mean, obviously, and then the Japanese in China, if we want to take it to the Pacific again as an example, and obviously the British and or Indian POWs who ended up working on the Thai-Burma Railway. So I don't think it's directly equivalent, but on a unit by unit basis, you could certainly find units in the Allied forces who did similar things to certain units from, and you could compare. Yeah, it's definitely a thing you can't lose sight of. And looking at the history.
I just think it's funny when you do go to shows or you do go to exhibitions and things like that, and you have these guys and they're having this massive debate about whether this is right or that's right or whatever. But the next thing, then they're sending some fella to Coventry because he's got the wrong pattern belt on.
Oh yes, indeed, yeah. The priorities can be a bit strange in that regard. I think the history gets lost sometimes, and the nitty gritty of there's different levels there's different areas of interest. It's having an interest in the kit and stuff is one thing, but you also need an interest in sort of the bigger picture history of what was going on at the time. Otherwise, it's meaningless. We see this at shows where you've got chaps portraying a particular area of history, let's say post-war, generally where these things are becoming more interesting now and people are doing them more often, and they'll have picked and chosen little bits of the story of the time, and their kit's maybe not that great but passable, and they'll be presenting this, and you think you're perhaps doing this for the wrong reasons. You're not actually fully into the history. You don't have a deep enough understanding to be recounting this to the public. The problem is, of course, it's a hobby, and you can't really police things like that.
But that, I suppose that goes back where you have the guys where I'll never wear reproduction. Everything has to be 100% original. Like at the end of the day, it's a hobby. People have to start somewhere.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Like I don't get everything right 100% of the time.
No. I think we've had a recent thing we've picked up on is the wearing of the respirator haversack on the chest and passing the string through the strap rather than through the eyelet or anything like that. That was a relatively recent thing for us to work out the correct way of doing that. And there's always areas you can be improving upon, and it's it's a historical recreation. It's never going to be 100% because that's I think you have to take the fact that you aren't the person, you aren't a soldier of that period. Your attitude, if obviously we don't really play characters as some people do. I know some reenactors have a persona almost that they portray. We don't really do that, so it's not something we're trying to achieve, but you're never going to have the correct persona, for example, because you're never, a soldier from that time period. You didn't grow up in the Depression years, so you're not going to be
it's the same, like I suppose when people like they ask me, I did a video there before on tips and hints where people have asked me questions and I've tried to answer them. Like, do I believe the army influences or can help in collecting? Like, yes, it can, in the fact that if I see a guy wearing something, or if I see him doing or operating a certain way in a photo, I know why he's doing it that way.
Yes.
Do I know what's inside these pockets? No. But like, I'd have an understanding in the fact that I have been overseas, I have done that type of job, that I wouldn't exactly know what he's feeling, but I'd know an aspect of what he's feeling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. You don't necessarily have to have a military background to collect. Like, for whatever reason, your grandfather served with Nelson.
Yeah. Great. Many relatives ago. Yes.
And that's your interest. That's what sparks your interest, and you start collecting from there. So, like, as the authenticity or the guys that brag or give out to other people, like, there's no need to give out to people, or there's no need to pick on people because their tunic isn't exactly 100% or their pants isn't 100%, because they're learned, first of all.
This is it. I think the picking on is the wrong attitude. I think if someone is open to and willing to receive constructive assistance, not even constructive critique, it's assistance. Sometimes we helped. There was a theatre company locally who did a thing in open air, and David and myself, a friend of mine, we were doing a display at the same time, happened to be, and we just went over and said, guys, couple of little things we can. The uniforms weren't spot on, but they were a theatre company. They weren't professional. You know, they were professionals doing a job rather than reenactors with their own collections. Yeah. And they had their belts on upside down. So we just went and said, "Could we just help you out? Your belts are on upside down." They were quite happy with that, and it made it look better. Yeah. And if you can approach it in that way and be diplomatic and just try and help people, that's fine. But yeah, just bullying people because of it isn't going to get you anywhere. It's not going to improve things, and it's just going to make them feel lousy. So why would, as you say, picking on is definitely not.
But and then I mean, like, if like the Second World War haversack that I'm putting together at the minute, like I've 80s ration pack or 80s mess tins in it.
Yeah.
For the simple reason that I plan on eating out of those, and I don't, I don't know if the originals, shall we say, are in a good enough shape for me to eat out. But these were brand new, second-hand surplus.
I'd avoid eating from the steel ones unless they're absolutely spotless. If the tinning on them is in mint condition, I would avoid them. Yeah. The early aluminium ones I've got, I would use. But as I said in the video where I looked at the haversack contents, if you're going to be eating from them, then perhaps your more modern aluminium examples are a reasonable stand-in, because you're not going to see them most of the time. And if you're eating from them, you want something that's safe to eat from. So,
but I mean, unless you were literally out with a measuring tape and taking reference, like, you're not going to tell the difference. And as we said earlier on in the video, the chances I guarantee you there's photos there where you have guys with battle dress serge pants on them and a later version tunic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The blouse and trousers are mixed and matched, and you see Fusilier Payne in 1944 is still wearing early battle dress serge. Yeah. So there's no reason you wouldn't be wearing early battle dress later in the war. Yeah. So yeah, as you say, they were definitely mixed and matched. It's what was taken off the shelf and the right size for you, and then handed over to you. You know, that's the bottom line. So yeah, no, you'll definitely see a mix of kit, as we were saying earlier.
So, but I do believe the one thing that personally is my pet hate, shall we say, is when I go to now. I've learned to bite my tongue and just wander off. But when you're portraying 90% of the time portraying professional soldiers, or they were professionally trained soldiers. And you're, for whatever reason, I can understand guys that are in their base camp or whatever, having their jackets off, their caps in the back of their head, and they're chilling out like. But when you walk past and they have a mock village made up or a sentry area, or whatever, and the sentry's got the helmet in the back of his head, he's smoking a cigarette, and he's like whatever, and you're like, no.
Yes, there's a conduct of behaviour in certain settings. It depends what you're trying to portray, but you should be trying to emulate the soldiers of the time rather than, as I say, this is it. It's not just putting the uniform on. It is trying to. If you're doing a reenactment rather than we tend, the group I'm with, we tend to do displays where we talk to people from a historical point of view. So we're I guess you'd say a costumed demonstrator of the kit. So I'm a living mannequin a lot of the time. But if you're trying to portray something, we have done training days and things where we did a immediate post-Dunkirk training day. And whilst you're doing your drills and stuff, and your weapons training and your bayonet drills and stuff, you do it as you would have done it. You don't, you're not lounging around in the interim unless you're,
That would bother me more than a guy having,
the military bearing is more
68 pattern jacket on and a Mark 6 helmet.
Not an unreasonable combination. 68 pattern combat smocks were used right the way through into the 90s. So,
but like from a soldier, from an ex-soldier, I understand the fact that when I'm given new kit, that's my good kit. So whatever used to be my good kit, now turns into my
working kit. Yeah.
So like that could be 68 pattern, 84 pattern, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear that in the field until it gets ripped to bits or I get another issue. So like I understand why that happens.
Yeah.
But whereas for a realist or for a person, a bean counter or a ball counter, they'd be like, at that time they had Soldier 95. Why aren't you wearing Soldier 95? And I'm like going, you know, because of this.
It's the military bearing thing is definitely a thing with groups and stuff. I mean, it depends exactly what they're trying to represent.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes think. We had a really good one. We went down to. Come on, Simon. Can't remember the name of the event. Anyway, and we were portraying Home Guard, and there was another group there portraying Home Guard, and we got talking to them. We went and did some drill with them because they wanted some assistance with the drill.
Yeah.
And having that little bit of ability to do period foot drill and period rifle drill adds so much. And you do see some some sites. There's some videos on YouTube which are, and I've seen people do, oh, well, they're supposed to be troops in training, so that's why they're rubbish. And it's like, well, yeah, but the sergeant who's instructing them doesn't know what he's doing either. So, that's not great. Yeah. So that defense doesn't really work. But, some people just don't want to put the effort in, I think, or don't see the need to. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
I suppose the difference between collecting and reenacting is when you're a collector, you know the history of it, you know what it looks like, even to a certain degree what it smells like.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
But as a reenactor, you're taking it. Personally, myself, you're taking an extra step. Whereas, like, if I'm a collector, I know that's a flak jacket. I don't, but. Whereas a reenactor needs to know how the flak jacket is worn, why it's worn that way, as well as the history of whatever they're trying to portray as well at the same time.
If you want to do it well, that's certainly true. Of course, I think if some people skip those steps, but if there are many good groups out there, and I think that's the recipe for doing it right is knowing the history of at least the basic infantryman's kit, that's what you're doing, and. As you say, the history of that what was being done at the time, what army life was like at the time, the drill and so forth. As you say, interestingly, with collecting, some of the chaps I'm friends with, they have the drill manuals and so forth, good collections of them. I'm lacking in period paperwork in that regard, really. But the period foot drill and stuff, and that then gives you the basis to do it right. Whereas I think some people come into reenacting and don't have access to that sort of information, which it's a shame. Quite a lot of it's available online now. Quite a lot of the manuals and things are available online. So, the resources are out there, but it requires almost that part of your collection. You almost require some of that stuff as part of your collection as well to inform your reenacting, if you will.
But that's a very good thing that you brought up there about for no matter what you do in collecting, reenacting, you should be doing research. For one reason, it'll be cheaper for you because you'll stop buying fake
absolutely
production stuff.
Yes, I mean, I made mistake when I first came to the hobby. I bought stuff by mistake because of not knowing. I think we've all been there. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's if you're not putting in that effort into researching or for whatever reason, you're going to let yourself down. You're going to cause yourself an issue by spending too much money on something, or somebody calling you out at a show and going, look, this isn't right or this isn't wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And especially when you're dealing with the public as well, because if you do put in that little bit of effort, and if you looked well and you portrayed yourself well, and if you did things right, you'll get called back by other groups and say, look, we have a show coming up here or whatever. And it's like everything else. I mean, I used to do years back, I did World War I reenacting as a Munster Fusilier, 2nd Battalion Munster Fusiliers. And the reason I suppose I stopped and went more towards the collecting side of it was because of that reason. Whereas I was putting in so much effort into my impression, putting so much effort into my equipment, and you're standing there and you're going, so why did I put all this effort into doing this when these guys are buying a uniform off Wish and looking like Captain Mannering?
Yes, I know. Yeah, that's been a big thing on the railway event circuit recently is these sort of polyester cheapo fancy dress costumes have made an appearance, which is a shame. But
well, like each to their own too. I can understand people don't have money and times tough and things are like that. But you can do like you could go down to your thrift store and buy yourself, or your secondhand shop, buy yourself a pair of corduroy pants, get a pair of old boots, a jacket, and a flat shirt or a collarless shirt, and go to the events as a civilian and learn information off the guys. And
yeah, there are different ways of doing things. The fancy dress stuff, which is really all you can. Well, we joked at one point of getting one of those. I think they're actually a one-piece suit. Those Captain Mannering.
Yeah, it's like a onesie type thing, but it comes up the back.
Yeah. We were thinking of doing that, but with a proper officer service cap and proper webbing and everything, and proper boots, and just put proper insignia on it, and as a bit of a laugh. But they've certainly made an appearance on the scene, which is a bit of a shame in a way. But a member of the public, you can go to a railway event, a member of the public, and you can go to any event as a member of the public and dress up. That's the thing. So you don't have to, not necessarily actually displaying there. But it's another side of everything. I have to say, it's interesting that's become.
As you were saying there about dressing up in different weird things with badges and stuff, they used to do a thing to us in recruit training called the choke chain.
All right.
When we were in trouble, whereas the NCO would literally be standing outside and you go, right, you 15 minutes upstairs, bull boots and pajamas on, and be down here and parade again.
Oh.
Up on your pajamas, bull boots, you'd be downstairs, he'd inspect you, and he'd go, okay, 15 minutes, I want you in your number ones with your back, just to waste time, or we've obviously done something wrong. So we, as they used to say, we've wasted their time, so they're going to waste our time.
Waste your time, yeah. That's not, I like that. You can make some really weird combinations.
Yeah.
That is a plan for the future. I'm going to do, just as a daft video, a mannequin dressed up in all different periods of stuff. 1908 over a flak jacket maybe, or something like that. We'll see.
Bomb disposal helmet on him or something.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. Yes, we'll see what I can come up with. But really good chatting to you, John.
No problem.
Just looking at the time, unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to make a move now to get on with a few bits and pieces this afternoon. But it's been really good chatting to you, and we'll have to do this again at some point.
Yeah.
And as said earlier in the video, obviously I'll link through down below to your channel if people are interested to go and have a look at your videos as well. I need to catch up. Actually, I'm behind, so that's possibly something for later on this evening.
I'll run a quiz on you later on during the week, and we'll see how you get on.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you very much again, John, and to everyone else, bye for now.
Thank you.
See you, John.